You record. I am pleased to have former Georgetown national championship point guard Gene Smith, and I would just want to welcome you because I pretty much tried to hawk you down. I said I watched the Big East documentary, and I remembered when I was younger how much I loved you because you were the best on the ball defender I've ever seen.
Appreciate
So
that.
I do. That was some great times. Georgetown, I don't think you can play defense like that now, but I really enjoyed that 84 season. I'll tell you two of my favorite memories, and you respond because I'm a Lakers fan and I'm a Georgetown guy. Two moments: the Magic Johnson Scott Hook to beat Boston, and John Thompson hugging Fred Brown after that disaster, and they won the national. Those are memories that last for me, especially with Brown. We're going to get into all your years of Georgetown, but just that moment, it almost gets me emotional when I see that. If you could bring him on, that's a guy I would love to talk to.
Yeah, that was an incredible moment because what preceded that was the '82 championship against North Carolina, in which we lose by a point.
Yeah,
Freddie makes the errant pass, and what gets lost in that '82 Final Four is the game before that against Louisville. Freddie was the player of the game.
yes.
He had an incredible floor game. So Freddie was a magician with the basketball. So him doing that or making that pass backwards was just his vision was, insane.
It was a weird kind of play, so I do kind of understand how that went about. But it was meant for Carolina, and it was meant for you guys to win that year. But I want to talk about your recruitment process. Why did you go to Georgetown?
I went to Georgetown just out of, I only had two scholarship offers, and Georgetown was one of them. Morgan State and Georgetown. So it's funny because they both, they both wound up. Well, Georgetown wound up being considered an HBCU when we were there. So two,
Yeah.
H- two
Yes.
HBCU. But yeah, it was one of those things where we had an All American on our team named Billy Martin,
Yes.
and who eventually, he came a year after me, which was crazy for me. Um, And I think Big John was recruiting him, and just through recruiting him, you see other players. And my game was the same from grade school to college. Defense was my hallmark. I figured out somewhere along the lines, stamina, intensity,
Yeah.
possessions matter. So if I can be a guy on a team that I generate possessions, that's the only way you score if you got the ball. So
Yeah, I viewed you as a rock waller when I saw you on the court. Okay. Now you come to find out, you get the news, Patrick Ewing's coming.
yeah,
82. What are you thinking? Because
well,
you have Sleepy Floyd already.
and again, fam, you got to understand. For me, it was all about me stepping up to the challenge of playing on the next level. DC had incredible talent in the '80s, so I was playing against great guards. I was playing against great teams. Played in the high back then, and that was the creme de creme of high school basketball. So I was used to playing against good talent, but wasn't in my mind that we were playing on that level and in the Big East. So Patrick Cumming was just like surreal. I mean, it was surreal to the program. I mean, the program was already starting to percolate.
Yes.
He just took it over the top, but it was just one of those things where I was still finding myself as a college athlete, as a student athlete. So it was just again, it was just part of the journey. Like I was along for the ride at that point.
Well, 82, you know what? It was also a shift in the Big East overall. Instead of this like group tribes, it turned into one conference. Now you're getting close to where the ACC is. You're becoming one of the best conferences in basketball. That was the Ewing years, and then the Mullen and the Pearl. And the 82, you guys got to the Final Four. You lost to Carolina, but now you're starting to get noticed by the national press. And the 83, I don't like talking about 83. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
83,
know, Memphis, I didn't like 83.
22-10. We win the first game against Alcorn State. And
Mm.
then we faced Keith Lee in the second round. But what's so interesting about that is Michael Graham, the darling of the Final Four in
My
'84,
guy.
your guy.
That's
Uh,
my guy.
he always points out that game is a game where he said Georgetown needs a power forward, and
Wow.
Georgetown because Keith at that time Memphis State had Keith Lee. I think they had Bedford, so they had
Yep,
two.
they're both.
They had two bigs. So, Michael Graham kind of honed in on that. And now Georgetown became, someplace where he wanted, he's from DC, played spring.
Yeah,
So that became important to him. I just want to highlight the first year of the Big East was 79-80.
yeah.
That was the first year of the Big East. And the first MVP of the Big East was John Doran of Georgetown, Bebe.
Because
So
we won the Big East tournament, 80.
won the Big East tournament.
Yeah.
So, Georgetown went to this. I always get confused. It was a Sweet 16 they went to in '80. I always say it was the Elite Eight. I think I
Lost to Iowa, right?
lost to Iowa.
Yeah.
And so they were knocking on the door. 82 in the door. 84 got what we left on the table.
I want to talk about the 84 season in totality. It was
Yeah.
a great year. I think it lost to St. John's and Dallas Comagene and DePaul. Was it Villanova or how many loss you had?
We were 34-3.
Okay. And then the Big East tournament, and then the doggone Pearl Washington. I screamed at my black and white TV, somebody guard him! Oh my gosh. And you guarded everybody, but that guy's so hard to guard, man.
Into the Stephen A. Smith when he goes off on Pearl and how he took Gene Smith to the cleaners and this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I watched that game for whatever reason in my sister's room, black and white TV. I'm frustrated the whole game. And then Graham got into it with Boeheim. I hated Jim Boeheim until I got to know him. Started covering as a Rutgers grad. I started covering Big East Media Day, and he's a cool guy. By that time, I hated them, and I was glad we survived that overtime win.
Yeah,
Survived that game.
The '84 season was tumultuous off the court. We had a lot of personal loss. Some players lost their parents.
Oh.
So that was tough. We were a team of unique individuals that once we got between those lines, we kind of connected. Fred and I were the only two seniors, which made you think '85 was going. We were going to be the first team to do back to back.
Yeah.
But just sticking with '84, it was just one of those things where everything gelled at the right moment. Reggie, as a freshman, was building. He started the first half of the year.
Oh my goodness.
And then kind of got in the rotation on the bench. We were legitimately 10 deep. Like
oh
10,
yeah.
We were
Horace Broadnax.
Broadnax.
Michael Jackson was the scorer. You were the defender.
I mean, it was just a really good team. And then Michael Graham came on at the right time. He played during the year, but he played sparingly. I mean, the practices were incredible. Big John put together a really good team that gelled at the right time. But I do think had we won in '82, had we won in '84, had we won in '85,
yeah.
we need to do this because they'll be talking about Georgetown ad nauseum. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But 84 was great.
Yeah.
We got to and I watched Kentucky and I was nervous. And I said, somebody's got to do something about this darn Dickie Beal. I said, my guy's going to get him. When you came in there, you shut his behind down. He's one of the quickest guards out there. And that was the key. Cause I think they were 3 for 31. They went through a bad stretch where they didn't score for a while when they had a 12-point lead. And then you got to shut them completely down.
I mean, what gets lost in it, Michael Jackson had 10 rebounds that game.
Wow.
I mean, it was just so many things that went wrong for them and that went right for us. but it was a seismic game in that they had twin towers. I think they had seven NBA players on that team or
Hmm.
players. Um, and I still think we were not media darlings.
No.
You sent me something just now that I watched. It was the road to the Final Four from
Uh,
'84, and
yes.
they did mention us as being one of the top seeds in the country. So those who knew basketball knew about us, but I don't know if the average fan still had, from a
I,
national level.
I think beating Kentucky, the big bad blue bloods, and there's upcoming Big East. Now they go, whoa, wait a minute. Now the Big East is coming. Who Georgetown is really that team. That
Yeah,
was big. And then we had to play the Houston Cougars. And I was glad Klein Drexler graduated, but even that was a really good team with him not there. And you got hurt. And if you
yeah,
don't get hurt, you beat them a little worse. Alvin Franklin's not going off like that if you got hurt.
right.
You know, he was doing the spin moves, doing all those, keeping them close. He does nothing if you're guarding him. I watched that just about 30 minutes ago.
Okay. I mean, that was a tough one for me because I remember Coach Thompson and I had a moment after the game where he just came by where I was sitting and he just shook my hand and didn't say a word. And so we just connected on a level which I thought, he gave me the look. I appreciate everything you've done. We don't get here without you. But from a personal level, like, man, just the body failed me.
Uh,
I mean, what's so interesting is I get hurt in the Kentucky game scoring on the layup.
wow. Didn't know that.
I was supposed to get hurt playing D. I get hurt scoring the layup.
Layup. Uh,
But yeah, it takes nothing away from the accomplishment. It's just a strange feeling that we only have one chip. It's a
I
strange.
know. I know. Because it's crazy. 85 was insane when it came to the Big East because Villanova was great, St. John's, Syracuse, that with Pearl. Boston College was good with Jay Murphy and a guy from my hometown named Troy Bowers because I lived in Roselle, New Jersey.
Troy's
And
my,
he is.
yeah, Troy's my man. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
When
Now, let me ask you a question. How close are you to the Syracuse guys, Wendell Alexis and well, God rest Pearl Soul, Jim Boeheim, Raphael Addison, those dudes in your area. Do
uh,
you talk to them?
not the only, believe it or not, the only guy I talked to from that era is a guy Sonny Spira.
Hmm,
I think he's from Syracuse, New York. But he has a podcast with the guy Chuck Everson from Villanova
really?
called the Big East Rewind.
Mm-hmm.
So I talk to Sonny and Chuck pretty frequently. Um, but yeah, I don't have a running relationship with anybody from Syracuse. I do reach out to people from other Big East teams like St. John's,
Okay.
Ron Moses. I'm still cool with
Okay.
Billy Goodwin just through Facebook.
What about Mark Jackson?
Tony Bruin and Gene Waldron just on Facebook. But no extended conversations. No.
Did you talk about Mark Jackson?
Do not talk. I mean,
It's crazy that one year, 80, I think it's 85. He was the backup point guard because Moses was the starting point guard.
who had been a freshman when I was a senior, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What I do remember about Mark is he would never face me. He could
Hmm,
bring the ball up, like
yeah.
angle, and I was like, this dude is a freshman, has already figured out, like, you're not getting this ball from me, dude. Like
Yes, he was
he was
crafty.
big,
He was
and
good.
yeah,
And he had long arms because I did meet him when he was on Toronto.
yeah. Incredible pro career.
Yes. Okay, 85. You were gone, but I do want to talk about the sweater game because St. John's beat Georgetown earlier and the Garden. I just remember I'm going to my brother's house because he had a bigger TV. And I just remember how electric the Garden was. And all of a sudden, John Thompson whips out the sweater. And what were you thinking in that game? Describe when you're watching that.
Well, I was watching the game because I had a ticket to the game. I was working in New York, so I had a front row seat, and it was just Coach Thompson controlling the moment. It was Coach Thompson putting his imprint on the game and bringing the volume down because
Mm,
we had wars with St. John's, we had wars
yeah,
with Syracuse, we had wars with Villanova, and the temperature for that game because that was a number one versus number two game,
yeah,
so it was nuts in there. So
yeah.
he made it, he brought it down and took the win or the whatever momentum they had for that moment.
Yes,
He leveled the playing field, and I'm not. I think the game. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was a blowout. Like
yes.
I think we blew him out. But yeah, I mean, Big John was just seriously, dude. His mental preparation, how he like we were dogs. We
Yeah.
were we really bought into us against the world. We really bought into defense wins championships. We bought into like he had a saying, and I've said this many times. He had a saying: "We play to beat the cheat." So we came
Mm.
to the game already knowing it was 7 against 5 or 8 against 5. Like we came into the game knowing that we were not. We played with a chip. Like we're not going to get a fair shake. So it was almost like by any means
Well,
necessary.
that was where the Hoya paranoia came from because you guys. I mean, that's probably why I loved you guys. With the media and all that. John was so good with the media. I mean, he was combative, but he was clever. So he knew how to hand. He had them in the palm of his hands.
Right,
No,
right.
I love that. And then we get, you know, what was a tough game I was very worried about was the Georgia Tech game with John Sally in 85 and Mark Price. Mark Price was tough, man. People don't understand how good a college and pro player that guy was. And that we survived that with Dalrymple and Price. And
Hey,
wait, go ahead.
Horace Broadnex and Ralph Dalton.
Yeah, Ralph Dalton was a good backup center, man.
He came. Ralph Dalton hit big free throws. Horace played extremely well. Um, and again, that goes into '85, and it kind of brings us to what's going on today. Because
Mm-hmm.
today, you got potentially there could be four teams in the SEC in the Final Four.
Yes, I thought about 80. I thought about 85 when I saw the 14 SEC teams get in, and you definitely have a potential with that. And then we survived Georgia Tech, playing the Final Four, beat up St. John's, and then before I go about that, when you're watching Georgia Tech versus
Mm.
Georgetown, do you thinking, you know what? I'd like to guard Mark Price. If I was in there, I would be doing this, this, and this. Did you think of that when you were watching the game?
The only time I thought about, I wish I had 20 more minutes or 10 minutes, because I can do a lot with 10 minutes. I
Mm-hmm.
5 fouls, 2 steals, 2 assists. It
Absolutely. I know.
was the Villanova game.
Oh,
Be
I never watch it.
jump forward, but it's just Gary McLean played
You'd have
out of
had him.
played out
Yeah,
of his.
they shot almost like 90. They hit miracle shot after miracle shot, man. And Georgetown played a great game. They just ran to the wrong, and they almost lost. See, Villanova knew Georgetown because he almost lost to Villanova in the Spectrum. I remember, and we won some close games against them, so they were familiar. And we just didn't get it. And then we were good for a couple of years. Got Alonzo, and and this is why I hate Duke. It seemed like when they lost in '89 to Duke, Duke took off, and Georgetown kind of fell away. It's never been the same since that game.
You are so on point with that. I don't think people understand. Like when I look at Duke, and I have nothing against the Duke program, but I look at Duke and they talk about the brotherhood and this, that. I'm thinking, we're the brotherhood.
Yes,
'89 game with Dikembe and Zoe
Alonzo and Smith
Smith.
and all that guard play, and then Jackson.
Aaron Jackson.
And Turner, and it just didn't. We underachieved that game because we should have beat Duke.
Yeah,
Duke was
that
good. Leitner and them and Phil Henderson, them guys are good, but
yeah.
that still bothers me.
I
And
tell
that's
people
when this, huh?
all the time. I worked at Nike for over 2 decades, and I tell people all the time. Duke went from being an Adidas school after beating Georgetown to being a Nike school.
Wow, did not know that.
So it's like we kind of propelled them into the. And don't get me wrong, they had great teams, but I just feel like them beating us with that team definitely propelled them in a way that that trajectory.
If Georgetown beats Duke, does Grant Hill go to Georgetown? Didn't his mother go to Georgetown?
Grant Hill wanted to go to Georgetown,
Uh,
but so did Shaq, so did Kenny Anderson. I
did
mean,
not know that.
so many players said they wanted to go to Georgetown, but Big John didn't recruit them.
Uh,
So Coach had his I don't know, Coach had his way.
mhm.
What I always loved about the Georgetown teams is I always felt we embodied DC, the DMV. I
Yes.
felt we embodied DC. And, I'm far from giving Coach Cooley any recommendations but I just think you get back to embodying DC. I think that's a
Yeah,
great.
hopefully, I see a little bit of an uprising. I see a little bit of hope. Now, I'm gonna go past and then current.
Okay.
I'm gonna go to past. Okay, you're an incoming freshman. How much NIL money you gonna make?
That's very interesting because I, I know this.
Hmm.
I'm a hustler.
Okay.
I, I would be very engaging outside with local vendors, with local businesses. I would be because I think what happens is when you're heavily recruited, you're heavily
Uh-huh.
sought, you're so accustomed to people coming to you.
Yes.
The game has changed with NIL. You
Yeah.
still will have some of that, but it also gives you the opportunity to reach out to people. So with social media, I'm sure I would have a cadence. Like my whole thing being defense, I would be talking to detergents. I'd be talking to state
Yes.
movers.
Yes. And then think about this. You could have brokered a deal with Patrick Ewing and made NIL money off of him. There's so much possibilities of that people don't think outside the box.
Exactly, and again, that's where I challenge the universities. They have their groups, the NIL groups. I think they call them co-ops.
Hmm.
If you don't have former players on those boards to speak to their experiences and how they would translate today, I think you're doing the kids a disservice because don't get me wrong, if you're getting 2 million, you're getting 2 million.
Oh yeah.
But I'm trying to take that 2 million and turn it into 4 million.
Yeah.
Take that 2 million and set you up for once you bounce. Like I just think there's levels to it. But the money, it's almost like the NCAA set it up to fail, but
Hmm.
but it can't fail. It can't. And I'm excited for the players. I think when I hear these coaches, barking on it, it's like y'all been making the loot for so long. Like
Good money. Sneaker money. Good money. Come on
you
now.
know,
Preach.
versus hating on the kids, figure out a way how to make sure these kids are taken care of way past their college career.
Now I want to mention one player because this guy who's a Villanova guy, his name Priya Roy. He runs this tournament called the Metro Classic in New Jersey, and
Okay.
Mount Verde had the best teams in the country every year. So there's a kid named Derek Queen of Maryland. I covered that tournament for 3 years. His 10th grade, his 11th grade, his 12th grade year. I begged him to go to Georgetown. I was trying to work him, but I believe his parents loved Maryland. I tried my hardest to recruit him to Georgetown.
He is, look, he is He's so skilled.
Oh
Uh,
goodness.
he had that dog. He had that B more in him.
But he played, I believe from what he told me, he played against older guys. They taught him old school post moves. And he has that implemented where these kids don't know how to handle that because they're not used to that. And I love the kid. I tried. Gene, I tried, man.
Ron, I wish you would have called me. I'd have helped you try because that
Oh,
dude.
now we know each other because this the Priya Roy's runs this great tournament where the best players play in it. And oh my goodness, Mount Verde's had a great team. I tried. I know I can get Cooper Flag, and he's a great kid. Parents are tall. Parents were awesome. He's an awesome kid. But I was working on Derek Queen. I tried.
Do
There were
you?
several. Go ahead.
What was that team? The high school team. It was Cooper Flag, Dirk Queen. Who else was on
Yeah.
that team?
The point guard, I think he's on Baylor. And then the kid, the 3-point shooter from Connecticut. He's
Mm.
oh he was yeah.
Liam,
I
Liam Healy was on that team, right?
yes, yes. And it was an amazing watching covering them in high school when they came to Jersey and just looked awesome because I've known the coach Kevin Ball for 30 years. So
Mm.
I and I used to call him an assistant coach. Be like, Ron, I know you're trying to get him to go to Georgetown. I already know what you're trying to do. I tried that for years trying to get him. You know
Mm.
who else I tried to get? I'm trying to think. Oh, I tried to get Jonathan Kaminga because he played out here at Penn. And I begged him to go to Georgetown. Oh my
Not
goodness.
interested?
Hmm?
They weren't interested.
Now, did he just go pro? I don't know if he even went to college. I
They
think
could.
he went, yeah, he went G League. And he said, okay, he's gracious. Then I tried to get Cliff Amori. Uh, he's on Alabama. Man, Georgetown should give me a salary at this point in time. I try because I want to get back to that Final Four, man. But I love what Coach Cooley's doing. I like how he addresses things. I saw him on a show called The Fielder 68, which I do like. And he was on there and he was talking about how important it is, about the landscape, about what you need to do as far as recruiting and how to win in this environment. So he gets it. And I saw improvement this year, but what do you think they need to do to go to the next step?
Um, I think he's definitely on the road to success. I think having a combination of high school kids coming from high school, which I think he's still somewhat committed to, but then realizing that the portal is the game now. It's a present, it's a future, and figuring out how you can make those pieces blend. Micah Peavy was an incredible player for us
Oh
this year,
yeah.
and he came via the portal, so I think he has a handle there. And then Sorber was an incredible freshman. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Seriously got robbed for not being Big East Freshman of the Year. Like
Should have been. Absolutely.
that's crazy to me, and I'm biased, of course, but that's crazy to me. So I think just let him cook. You got
Yeah.
to let Chef Cooley cook, and I think it's interesting to see what happens with Bryce Hopkins
Yeah.
because I think it's between Georgetown and St. John's. Um,
Wow.
so I think it's just look. This is year three, and
Mm-hmm.
for me, year two should have been a tournament year. That's me.
Yeah.
That's me. I'm hard. Like my bar is high. Like your bar is high. So year three, tourney or bust. Like if he doesn't get us to the tourney, like dude, like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
for.
That is true. You know what I was happy about before I let you go? That
Okay.
St. John's Georgetown Gator Garden. That was kind of cool with the atmosphere. Okay, that means we're making progress because there was a buzz in that game. That was great.
So St. John crushed us in DC.
Yeah, I know.
They crushed us in DC, and I'm Big East through and through. So
Mm-hmm.
Georgetown's not in the tourney. I'm rooting for the next Big East team.
Me too. Me
Yes,
too. Well, now,
it's
Steve,
easier for me to root for St. John's than it is Connecticut.
now
Uh,
my I got one of my boys from out here that I known since ninth grade named Simeon Wilcher. He's a guard on St. John. So I had a rooting interest anyway because I know his dad is super cool. and he has another brother on Texas A&M. So I root for Texas A&M and St. John's, even though they didn't win, but they could come back next year. Listen, Monday I'm gonna try to get you to do a whole recap of the tournament because I have
Okay.
so many other questions to do, and I want to and see find Brown or whoever you can get to come on.
Okay.
I just want to reminisce and have a good old time because you guys got great stories.
Okay, Ron.
I'm gonna let you guys cook.
Okay. Okay. I look forward
Okay.
to it.
Thank you very much.